This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
This is your Black Smoke, no new Pope, ain't no hope, buckets in 4, leader fan radio network.
That was kind of frustrating.
And KFAN, that's KFAN.com. 1 minute, 56 seconds past the hour of 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time. Welcome back. It is a Wednesday edition of the Bumper to Bumper program on another beautiful weekday afternoon here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Guardsy produces the show. I am the host and the former Ink Stain Wretch newspaper, the Twin Cities. Barreiro is my last name. Dan is my first. We're delighted to be a part of your, maybe your drive home. Who's to say? Bradshaw and Bryan KFAN text line is available to you at 64686. And I think it's fair to say that we learned again last night, this is why they play the games. Because no matter how hard you think about, study, peruse, scrutinize, and even think about the range of possibilities in any game one in any series, I dare say very few of us have the kind of imagination, I certainly don't, that could imagine a game playing out the way it did last night at Target Center. It's not the losing, it's the how you lose. It's the melange of circumstances that the brew that is cooked up that includes our ongoing inability to make three-point shots, whether they are open or not. Steph Curry grabbing his, was it right thigh or left? Back of his right leg? I think it's right leg. Whatever it was, he's got a hammy, turns out. And then trotting off the court, going to the locker room, never to return again. I can't even say that I possibly could have anticipated that in the post-game scrum, the guy who would get lit up front and center by Chris Finch would be Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards. The Anthony Edwards who...
Face of the league?
Yeah, well, maybe face of the league. Certainly, to a certain extent, the creme de la creme for your Minnesota Timberwolves, the guy who said...
Ant-Man, Batman, Superman, Lakers in 5.
We just loved it. We were having so much fun with it. And last night, in I think, as frontal a fashion as Finchy, who can be frontal, has ever been before, just lights up Anthony Edwards. What's there to talk about, he says. You're the leader of the team. You've got to come out and set the tone. If your shot is not going, you still have to carry the energy. If I got to talk to guys about having the right energy coming into an opening second-round game, then we're not on the same page. I didn't have that confluence of events on my bingo card for Minnesota Timberwolves in game one at home. I am as gobsmacked as anybody. Again, not that they lost, that it was impossible that they could lose, but they could lose the way they did. Did you ever play back in the day? You went to 5 colleges, correct?
Yes.
So I'm assuming somewhere along the way you played intramural college basketball,
yeah.
in the
you
gyms.
Go up to the rec center.
Go to the rec center and
play some hoop.
Yep. In some cases, it wasn't even that the teams were established. It was just a bunch of people and who's got, shirts and skins and who's got necks and all that kind of stuff.
A little pickup action.
And you remember that feeling you'd get where your team, you figure out who's on your team. And the guy who wants to think of himself as the point guard, or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's the center. Says, all right, so what do we want to run here? Hey, what do we want to do offensively? And somebody else says, let's just start playing. Let's just get out there. It'll come together. Just play basketball. That to me is what the Wolves looked like last night. They looked like an intramural team that just met each other. That they didn't even know each other's names, let alone what each of them might do to work in concert to have a decent outcome. It was as odd a first half, I thought, especially offensively for the Wolves, as I can imagine or remember. I think it's the fewest overall number of points we've scored in over a year. Going back, I think, literally a season or two. And I kept looking at the screen. Going, did they start the game? Is this, what's going on here? This doesn't even look real. This looks like some sort of pseudo basketball event. We looked flummoxed. We looked confused. And we shouldn't be that confused by any zone defense because some of it was the vaunted Steve Kerr matchup zone. Not to be confused with the vaunted Doc Rivers matchup zone that took us apart in Milwaukee, right? Wasn't that why we blew the 24-point lead in Milwaukee?
It was.
Correct. And I am aware that some of the shots we took were open shots, but nothing looked organized. Nothing looked cool, calm, and collected about what we were doing. And meanwhile, I hate to put it this way, but the wily Golden State Warriors veterans ran a clinic, man. It was a clinic. It was clinical. Even after Steph Curry goes down, what they were able to do. I mentioned yesterday, I didn't think Jimmy Butler, I thought we had enough good defensive options on Butler that he was not going to go off offensively in this series. And as a scorer, he didn't. He really didn't. In fact, I think his shooting percentage was pretty crappy. Mm-hmm. But what he did do, especially once Steph was out, was what? He ran it. He orchestrated it. He got people open. We missed assignments. We forgot about, at some point you go, maybe we should guard Buddy Hield. We know he's streaky, which means he can go 0 in a game, but then he can hit 7 or 8 or 9 straight shots in a game, and we didn't even seem all that interested in messing with him. And I think on the TV broadcast, there was this, you got the sense that, all right, here come the Wolves. It's finally going to catch up to the Warriors that they don't have Steph Curry. They're coming. The Wolves are coming. I never felt like the closest we got it was 9, right? Like about 8 times we cut it to 9.
Yes. The last one was Rudy at the line, missed a free throw that would have made it 8.
And that was it.
Yep.
And so now we find ourselves, and as the game is playing out, I'm thinking to myself, at that point, I don't know how injured Curry is. So I'm going with the obvious at that point, which was, look, you got to get this game. Because if the Warriors are able to steal this game, automatically they can sit Steph for game 2 because they can feel like, well, we got our split here. That'll give them an extra 2.5 days to recover. And they can then feel like, well, we'll go back home with a chance to take control of the series. Now, the latest information seems to indicate Steph is unlikely to play until at the earliest game 6. If there is a game 6.
Right.
If there is a game 6. But that's to me how it was playing out, that you're on top of everything else, adding insult to injury, you are handing them an opportunity to feel good about themselves, even if Steph misses a couple. And by the way, maybe he comes back a little bit sooner. Who knows? Most people think it's a week minimum on that kind of injury, correct?
Yes.
But it's Steph Curry. I don't know. And meanwhile, like I said, the other guys, not all of them old, but some of them have been around, but certainly Draymond, who had made 3-point shots in the first half than we did the entire game, at least until we finally got into a good stretch in the second half where we hit a couple. The whole thing, did it not feel off to you? The whole thing felt odd. Like it was a parallel. It was the Wolves game 1 in a parallel basketball universe to the real one.
And I'm not sure what universe Anthony Edwards was in for the first quarter and a half or for the first 2 quarters. He felt particularly off.
He didn't even want the ball at the end of the quarter.
I know.
It was at the end of the half. Did you see that? He went and hid, like LeBron James. The guy who always demands the ball on that play. It was DiVincenzo that had it at the top of the circle.
The stretch that kind of epitomized it was where he drove, missed the shot, got the putback, and missed the putback even worse than he did the original shot. That set a very strange tone. And the other thing I'll highlight here in the first segment before we do bonus bucks, the Warriors, the team that has 4 championships, or with Butler, the team that's been to 2 finals. How many times was Draymond Green on the floor last night for a loose ball? How many offensive rebounds did Golden State just cut through to grab in front of a couple of Timberwolves just standing there? How many times did Draymond just run by somebody to get a better shot? The Wolves were so sloppy and I think entitled and arrogant a little bit in just how they were going about it. Almost like, well, Curry's out and we're bigger and we're stronger and we're younger and we're deeper. These guys, including the lacrosse player, aren't going to do anything to us. And the Warriors said, well, we're going to try. And
you love that little hook shot banker, don't you?
have you seen the slow motion where Randall's guarding him and you can see Randall's face where Randall's basically like, where are you going, kid?
Yeah.
And he flips it up over him.
He scorched him.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Pat Spencer. We got to win the non-Pat Spencer minutes tomorrow night.
Played 1 year of college basketball at Northwestern, correct?
Yes.
After being one of the greatest lacrosse players in the history of the game.
Yes.
And he's in the NBA second round, contributing to a first game victory over the heavily favored Minnesota Timberwolves in Minnesota. Anyway.
Sloppy.
That's true. Also, grand in your hand. Bucks, bonus bucks, we call it.
BigDeck.com wants to help with it. Fun is the first keyword of the afternoon. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword fun.
I mean, what is there to talk about? I mean, you're the leader of the team, and you got to come out and set the tone, in all ways that happens. And if your shot's not going, like you still have to carry the energy. So, I don't think there's, if I got to talk to guys about having the right energy coming into opening second round game, then, we're not on the same page. So.
That was the quote from Finchie, one of them, after the ball game. I have to tell you that I'm not going to sit here and fall on a grenade for Anthony Edwards because he had his difficulties. He did lose some people defensively at key moments at the time. In fact, he lost Buddy Hield at the point where they'd cut it to 9. One of the times we'd cut it to 9.
Yep.
But I don't think this was just about him at all. I actually think this was, and in fact, here's where I'll even stand up for Edwards a little bit. How many times did he try to slash to the basket and get to the basket and just miss the layup?
Yeah.
8, 9, 10 times?
And he was big on the glass. He got a bunch of rebounds.
He was big on the glass, and defensively, I saw him. Who was he guarding out on the wing where he stood them up, ended up blocking the shot. It was a shot clock violation.
Right.
I would not. This might have all been calculated. This might be a big chief triangle, Phil Jackson kind of psychological move by Finchie, where he thinks there's a greater good here. But I think this was a lot more the collective. Even though I get it, he's supposed to be the guy. And I got to tell you, and this is the dangerous game you're always flirting with as a head coach. You can make the comeback that, well, you shouldn't. If you have to tell people, then maybe you haven't done the best job preparing them all along, coach. Or here's another option. Try something different offensively. Whatever they're doing, it's getting in your team's grill. They're unsettled by it. Run something else. Try something that might change the game's calculus a little bit. And, perish the thought, if you're as frustrated by the lineup as you are, go to the bench. I think Shannon got 2 minutes.
He did.
That was it.
Took a charge.
Nikhil was dreadful.
Again.
Dante was dreadful.
Again.
At key points. He had a couple of nice moments, but yeah, offensively. I think he had he had 4 turnovers in 33 minutes. 4 turnovers and 4 assists. That's not considered a very good ratio, I don't think. Randall he got the free throw line, I'll give him that, but he was not very good. He ended up, as even he talked about, with 3 rebounds. Rudy, it's not fair to Rudy because they were cheating, apparently. We come to find out today that we sent a bunch of tape in that Rudy got abused the whole game, and they're cheating against him. So apparently it's not Rudy's fault. So Conley didn't hit a shot, right? He was 0 for 5. Now, he had 5 assists and a steal, but, you got to hit a shot every once in a while. Jaden, I thought, was very up and down. Nas, was he the one who finally hit our first 3?
He was.
And then they stopped the game for that.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Well, because some of us ran out on the court. It was an electric moment.
What it was.
It was an electric moment.
Yeah. I think it was more than that, and I'd again say it's a dangerous game when you throw the team under the bus completely to that degree, because you could sit and say, well, this team didn't look particularly well prepared. Because I don't think it was effort. I think it was we didn't know what was going on. We looked like we didn't even know what city we were in. And we can fall back on the usual cliche, which is, well, same old Wolves. This is what they do, especially when the other team loses their best player or players. We played down to the competition. Or, as we talked about before the game yesterday, the larger trap, which is suddenly you're the team that's expected to win. They're the underdog. And as we talked about at the start of the show yesterday, if there was one team that looked as if it was raising its head to the heavens and saying anything's possible, it wasn't the Wolves, but it was the Golden State Warriors while Steph was in, and then even after Steph left the game as well. So, you can look like you're not trying if you're inept at everything you do. Urgency, yeah, the rebounding disparity was not good, given that you're supposed to have all the height advantages that you do. Is that effort? I don't know. Is that where you are in the court? I really thought a lot of it just looked like we had never played together, and they didn't really seem to know what plan B or plan C was. Now, your guy Horton's got a stat indicating the number of open looks again through the roof. But I am with Finchy more on this, and that is I don't think that's all I saw. I saw some rushed shots. I saw some bad shots. I saw some shots taken like, well, we don't know what else to do because nothing is working. But let's face it. I mean, the one guy who was trying to go downhill heavily was Edwards. It was uncanny his inability to finish, which we talked about all season. Statistically, he's not great at it. But you almost reached a point on this occasion where you go, is he ever going to score around the rim? Right? Once upon a time, the Wolves had a player named Wally Szczerbiak.
Remember him well.
And
he won the MVP of the rookie sophomore game.
But he had sometimes difficulty finishing.
Yeah.
That's why he was mainly a jump shooter. I mean, I hate to harken back to that. It sounds sacrilegious in Ant's case, but it just looked like I don't know if it was a balance thing, hands are too small thing, can't get up, he's out of balance thing, out of whack thing. And I'll be honest, also, I don't think he was fouled that much. There's that old deal of he'll scream, he thought he was fouled, and people, we never get the calls. I didn't even think he was fouled on maybe one of them, maybe a couple of them, but I didn't even think that was the issue either.
Now, he did have a conversation with an official late in the game that I happened to overhear, where he mentioned, I shot 5 threes tonight. I had 22 shots. I shot 4 free. He said 4. He actually shot 5 free throws. And he was trying to make his case that it's not possible for me to only shoot that few free throws if I'm at the rim that much when they have no rim protection. But in the playoffs, I mean, we've already seen it. Like, there's just times where you're not going to get calls, especially because it's frustrating for him, I'm sure, because a guy like Buckets, who's so adept, just like Luka is, at making any kind of contact look like a foul. He got a call on that little fadeaway jumper in the lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it was Nah or Jay. It's like there was absolutely no foul there, but he sold it, he played it, and he knows how to work the angles to get whatever kind of contact. Ant's not very good at that.
You're talking about Butler.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question. He is.
Ant's not very good at that.
They have their free throw frequency, the Warriors, is like 1 or 2 or 3 best in the league, I think. And it's largely because of the addition of buckets, but they get to the free throw line a lot. There's no question. It also struck me that it may well be that Steve Kerr is the anti-Redick.
Yeah.
Steve Kerr used, you got to go with 5 starters. There's always 5 in the court. Well, unless it's Norman Dale, and that's another story for another day. Hickory. But he had his 5 starters, and he played 7 more players off the bench. 12 players got minutes, and several of them were, in various ways, helpful. It wasn't like they dominated the game, but were helpful. I'm sure several of them, including the lacrosse guy, most of America has never heard of.
Yeah,
right?
We had to look.
Guy Santos, have you heard of him? 4 minutes.
Yep.
Gary Payton Jr. is a little better known. He played 26. Moody's got, but I think to Kerr's credit, I don't know if he intended all along to do it this way, but it looks to me like he did learn a lesson from the last series, and that is, if I have more faith in my bench, I got to go to them, because I do know they're going to come at us with numbers.
Right.
They can throw numbers at us, and in this case, oddly enough, they threw numbers at us than we threw than we threw at them.
And you know why it was so damaging, at least in my view, before we knew what exactly was going on with Curry. They got to do a lot of that in the first half because they were up so big. They didn't have to
get their feet wet.
Exactly. Get them in there. Let buckets rest. Let Draymond rest. There's video of Jimmy talking about how tired he was in the fourth quarter, which obviously makes a lot of sense. He had to do a lot after. But I was sitting next to Rosen, and that's what I said to him. I go, he doesn't even have to play. There was a time when none of the big 3 were on the court. It wasn't very long, and I think he called a timeout to even get a little extra rest and limit just how long those 5 without Draymond, Steph, and Jimmy were going to be out there. But imagine that before the game yesterday. There's going to be a point where Jimmy, Draymond, and Steph are not going to be on the floor. That would sound insane unless something crazy happened. And obviously Steph's was injury, but he felt comfortable enough to go, I'm going to give both of these guys a couple of minutes here, and I'm going to put a random 5 on the floor because our lead is so big, because the Wolves just failed to show up in that second quarter.
And Dede never fouled out, right?
He didn't. He got
the game with 5 fouls, and he's clever about making sure he doesn't get that 6th. If you want to do the conspiracy, the refs are going to help him, but I don't think the refs generally like to help Draymond Green all that much. I also think another smart thing Draymond did to suck the life out of the hatred is he wasn't that chippy.
No, he just played.
In fact, remember on one of the he fouled Edwards on a drive and held him up.
Yeah.
Held him up so he didn't go down hard, which I think is probably disappointing to the Wolves and their fans, who, you know what they wanted? They wanted him to throw him to the ground, shove him from behind to the ground, right?
Yep.
He didn't do any of that stuff. Now, that doesn't mean he can't or won't, depending on how the series goes. But I think in an odd sort of way, that took some of that hatred, that juice. Well, the Wolves themselves took most of the juice out with the way they played. But I think that was another added aspect to this thing. And now you're in this. I mean, as the cliche goes, if that game doesn't humble you, again, it's one game. I texted Mitchell. Let me give you Sam Mitchell's response. I texted him to see if he wanted to go on today. Let me see how I put it. You want on today to explain game 1 debacle? Sam Mitchell. It's only one game, and the Wolves were off. Wolves in 5. Okay, maybe he'll be proven right. But if nothing else, that game should just inject an important dose of humility into this team. That no matter how good we think we are, doing the rhymes, embarrassing the Lakers, why not us, why not now, that if we don't play the right way, especially when we're playing a team that has that kind of moxie on it, even if it's got limitations, we're going to embarrass ourselves. And now you have the added pressure of, oh my God, if we don't recover
exactly right
and win this series without Steph, we'll never hear the end of it, right? All the pressure, all of it, is now directly on the shoulders of the Minnesota Timberwolves. 100%.
The betting line has shifted dramatically. Even before we knew the severity of Steph, going to miss a week, at least, if people aren't up to speed on that. The betting line barely moved. The pre-series betting line, the Wolves were pretty substantial favorites, I think minus 160. It moved to minus 145 despite the loss, which isn't a huge jump.
No.
Now I think it's at like minus 200, the Wolves are, because of the Steph thing. And I'll ask you this, and I'll ask Wolves fans this. Is there anybody scarier in an underdog situation where the pressure is not on him, where he's going to get nothing but flowers if he drags this team to the Western Conference Finals than Jimmy, playoff Jimmy Butler.
There's no question.
And Draymond Green.
Yes.
And obviously a coach, Steve Kerr. I know we're going to talk about him, who's got a bunch of moxie himself.
He does.
But there is no pressure on the Warriors now.
No. Everything
is gravy, and Butler is outstanding in those type of situations, and it's a scary situation right now, I think.
And they've created it. Now, again, maybe Sam's right. The Wolves win the next 4, and this will all be about nothing. But I would still say that the unease that I think is legit didn't even have to appear in the first place if the Wolves simply go about doing their business from the start of that game. But they're going to have to figure out some things cerebrally, and that I think also goes back to Finchie to a certain degree as well. As I mentioned earlier, the Warriors are officially saying he's out a week, right? And that, I think, automatically would mean he'd miss 2, 3, and 4, or also 5. Because then
5 is Wednesday night.
Okay,
a week from today.
So that would be the one on the edge. More people are saying 6 and 7. I heard one former NBA player say, "I've had that injury. He's not going to play in this series again."
It'd be really hard to imagine
because it's the old soft tissue stuff.
Yes,
it sounds benign, but it's the stuff that can be the stickiest. And this is a guy. Remember, his game is not just shooting,
right?
It's moving.
Yes.
That's his whole game. He's not, you can't just park him out there for 3 points. I guess maybe you could, but that's just not the way he ordinarily plays, and that's not often the way he gets open shots either.
It was something that in the arena we didn't really know exactly what was going on. Thankfully, there's Twitter, so Shams, immediately tells us that Curry's out. How about the 3 he hit? I think it was over Nah, where he just dribbled between his legs like 50 times and then hit the arc where it leaves. I watched it again today. It leaves the TV screen. Yes. Like it's not a normal shot and just
he's
splashes
not even looking
straight
at the basket
down.
on some of those either.
I know.
It's bizarre.
It's a bummer.
Looking sideways.
I know Wolves fans will take anything they can get right now, but it is a bummer that happens to him at age 37, where his team's obviously playing really well, even before yesterday, and he's trying to make one last run at this thing, and he gets hurt. That, for basketball, sucks.
Well, it's an inauspicious start, I think it's fair to say. And it's still there for them.
Of course.
In all honesty, the Wolves should be able to not only win this series easily, if, in fact, Steph is out, but they should dominate. They should be able to dominate the series.
They should.
But they still have to do it.
Yes, that's
and as you say, with the pressure changing so dramatically, so quickly, you're going to have to go out there and do it. And as I mentioned, a million possibilities. We've been surprised before, but the way it played out. What did we score in the second quarter? 11 points.
We were stuck on 4 forever.
Points.
We didn't score for the first half of the quarter.
And remember, Golden State only shot 39%.
I know.
So defensively, we were not awful, although I thought we were very undisciplined and awful at the wrong times. And here's where it gets scary also. Again, Buddy Hield is a guy who can miss, he can go 5 straight games and not even be a factor. You'd say, did Buddy play tonight? And you don't even know. But he also can get in a stretch where he feels like he's Superman, right? And that's the other danger of seeding that first game the way the Wolves did is, what if he's just starting a stretch going back to Game 7 against Houston where he's going to have a heater quarter every game where he scores 14 to 18 points and maybe turns a game or saves a game? Because yesterday, you can argue, one of the threes he hits saved it as the Wolves had cut the lead back to 9 points.
What's going to be interesting is I heard on the way to the game, Micah Nori was on with Alan Horton. They do just a little
When's
quick
he coming out with us?
pregame thing. We're working on it.
All right.
He's got problems now. He's got to figure out how to stop the new offense.
That's true.
But he was talking about how the Warriors, and this is why it was an interesting matchup for the Wolves anyway, because they're not great on, and we saw this yesterday early and often, they're not great with teams that really cut, that really move, that really keep the ball moving. They're great isolation defenders if it's physical. If it's the Clippers, for example, a big ISO team, they're fine just locking up, guarding who you want to guard. And they were talking about how
they don't hunt matchups, individual matchups.
Not really.
Not the same way.
But did that change, though, in the second half? Because Nori was talking about how they're not a big screen and roll team. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure we saw them trying to get buckets freed up on Nas. And a lot of those shots, those 3-pointers, it seemed like it was just one pass, was we're going to run a couple of screens with Jimmy, and then we're going to let him decide where he's going to go.
And he's going to make the right decision every time.
And they made a couple of backbreaking threes in that fourth quarter just off of very simple screen and roll stuff. And that's what they're going to have to figure out. What are they going to do there?
He's any of that kind of action, he is a basketball savant. He's going to make the right pass. And like we saw last night, he doesn't force much offensively for himself. You know, he did have one lucky one where the shot clock's going down and he banked that one in. That was a crusher.
Well, and he was trying to draw the foul.
He wasn't
even trying to really shoot it.
So, but you know, you'll see he'll sometimes go up and then no, I'm going to keep the ball moving.
Yep.
Get it back to me. I'm gonna move to a place where if you move with me, I'm going to find you open as well. And we did see a lot of that. The other thing is the Warriors are clearly a sounder defensive team than the Lakers.
Yes.
In that, I don't know what they figured out together because you still look at them individually and you go, well, this shouldn't be a great defense, but they are extremely active. They did pack things in pretty well. They have no height, you could say, but then through much of the game, Butler was the guy they assigned to Rudy, which I thought was probably, on the face of it, you go, well, that can't happen. He's going to get a million lobs, but he didn't. He really didn't get that many lobs. He got a few.
Right.
But that's exactly what they did. Kerr, definitely, I think you could say the guy knows how to coach. But defensively, I think even Kerr talked about it after the game. Since Butler came, they've had statistically one of the better defenses, and he's a sound player. So they've collectively figured out, even if they're individually kind of weak, because I don't think Buddy Hield's very good defensively, but somebody also said, but here's what happens when you're on a team that's legitimate. You start feeling obligated to do more than you've ever done because there's more at stake. They make you feel bad if you don't. Because I mean, we talk about Heat culture, but there's Golden State Warriors culture to a certain degree. And
Buckets is pumping his tires big time, too.
Did you hear Barkley after the game?
I don't know specifically.
Here's my specific complaint. And again, there's no bigger Charles Barkley fan in the world, as you know, than I am. But I knew it was coming. And he not only did it at halftime, he did it after the game. The only thing every time the Wolves lose, he has only one observation. Rudy can't play in this series. Mm-hmm. That's all he goes back to. And I don't know how you watched that game last night. Now, what he's pointing to is because early they put Rudy out, put Draymond out high, and basically dared him to take some threes, and he got hot.
Yes, he made them.
Which I agree, that's a vulnerability if Rudy's got to be the one to come out there. But if you're playing the odds on Draymond,
totally.
What the hell? What are the odds are that he's going to be that hot?
Not very good.
But you got to come up with some. That does not explain. Deconstructing that loss is not simply about they've played Rudy off the court. They have to get Rudy up. That's the only criticism he ever has about the Wolves. He's got to broaden it a little bit.
He did go after Ant at halftime, and they all went after Ant, saying you can't have 1 point. But you're right. That was the easy second crutch for them. The other thing I loved that Kerr did, that the Lakers actually did in Game 3, and I was surprised they didn't go back to it. They just put their really quick guards out for a while. The Lakers did, and completely bogged down the Wolves offense for like an entire quarter. And what stood out to me last night was a bunch of times the Warriors just did not allow the Timberwolves a free outlet pass.
Very true.
The two little guards just stayed where they were, and that froze guys up for a half second. There was a turnover on one of them. There was an offensive foul on another one. And all of that stuff does matter. It does and it's just a little subtle. That's where I think coaching does matter in game planning, just little tweaks as you go, where we're not going to just let you get the rebound and outlet it quick and then run us up the floor and do whatever you want. We're not going to let you start like that. And you could tell it bothered multiple Timberwolves where you come down with a rebound and there's a guy right there. And just that little half second or second that makes you think, it gave them 3, 4, 5 extra possessions and definitely put the brakes on some things the Wolves wanted to do. And the Lakers did that in Game 3. And then never went back to it, which was very strange to me because it absolutely impacted how the Wolves wanted to run things.
I want to get a sense from the texters what it was like to be in the building last night. You were there, though, right? Did you go?
I was.
Yeah, and so you can answer that, but I want to hear from the texters as well. Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line, which was 64686. As I also mentioned, we're going to have Kessler in studio at about 5:30. We may add another basketball guest. We'll see. We're negotiating with several people. That might be added to the mix. But as I mentioned, keep the text coming. 64686 is the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. We've got some other controversies to get into as well when we come back. Doesn't Ernie Johnson have a stat they call the Ernie Johnson Nito I should say stat of the day?
Yeah, something
brought to you
like
by
that.
Nobody. Here's ours. I don't know what we name it, but it's a whopper. And in this case, it is directly connected with the results in the early game, the shocking results in the first game last night, in which the Indiana Pacers not only stole game one in Cleveland, they managed to steal game two as well. Since the beginning of the 1997 season, NBA teams have a collective record of 3-1,640 when trailing by at least 7 points in the final minute of the fourth quarter or overtime. The Indiana Pacers have two of those 3 wins a week apart.
Yeah.
How does it get any better than that?
It's crazy.
3-1,640. Pacers just have 2 of those wins. One of them was last night. The previous one was Game 5 of the first round series against the Bucks. And Halliburton, once again, Tyrese Halliburton was the hero. I also thought I'd heard a stat that in the final 2 minutes of regulation or overtime this season, he is 9 for 10. His shooting is 9 for 10 in getting his team either the lead or the tie.
That's clutch.
That would be clutch, would it not? That's 90%. And he was brilliant again yesterday. So if you want to talk about shocking outcomes, the Cavaliers were enough in control of that game where occasionally they take a shot at the bench of the 3 sidelined Cavaliers regulars, and they're yucking it up because they feel like, well, we're at least going to go back 1-1. We're fine. Everything's stabilized here. And believe me, by the end of that game, the smiles were indeed wiped off their faces.
What's it like in Cleveland today? Everybody's, pets' heads are falling off here today because of the opportunity that's in front of them. Cleveland's had this magical season, right? Everything's clicked. They've been the number 1 seed. They basically started the season not losing a game forever, and now they are completely up against it, against another team that in Jimmy Butler-like fashion is playing the underdog card about as hard as you can, right? Mm-hmm. Halliburton is definitely using the fact that NBA players, a small percentage of them, by the way, like 12% in the survey, called him the most overrated player in the league. He is using that. The team is using that. I'm sure Carlisle is using that. And they're in a great spot now with uncertainty even on the other side of the bracket too, right? With the Celtics and the Knicks. You'd have to think the Celtics are still going to be the favorite. They beat them a year ago. They've got all the scoring options they need and the pedigree. But the Pacers, a team that nobody talks about as a potential title contender, doing this to Cleveland.
Let me correct the record. Halliburton is actually 10 of 11 on shots to tie or take the lead in the last 2 minutes this season. 10 for 11. That's a little better than Anthony Edwards, as I recall, right? We've had that. His number was like, I think, 1 for 10.
Yes. Is his shot against Giannis in that Game 5 where he got ISO'd on him and just cooked him and went right, either pulled up or went right to the basket?
Went right to the basket for a layup.
Is that as viral as Luka's on Rudy?
It's a great.
Like, are we trashing Giannis?
No.
Everybody loves Giannis, right? Even though he, at the moment of truth, in an absolute meltdown of a game, he got cooked. It
is the other thing I do kind of like about Halliburton is a number of times when his team has needed a bucket, because he's a gunner. He'll take outside shots. But on a number of those occasions, he went right to the hoop. I'll take the 2. I'll take the layup if I can indeed get it. And we have to hope that Anthony Edwards does figure out a way to finish at the rim, as we like to say in the business, a fairly important part of the job. Let me see if you agree with this text from an individual who said he was at the game last night. Dave from Rochester writes, I was very surprised with how dead the atmosphere was and how apprehensive people were getting, especially in the second quarter. I think the fans that were there were waiting for the Wolves to wake up and do something different other than try to shoot three-point shots that were contested and were indeed not being made. How would you describe the crowd reaction last night?
Yeah, I think that's fair, but I don't think it should be surprising. I think because of how they played in the second quarter, it did get...
we were up 2 at the quarter, right? It was low scoring, and it was 20-18.
And that was such a strange quarter, too.
It was. It actually was.
You have the TV timeout 59 seconds in, and that's because Buddy didn't have the right shorts on, right? He had to go change quick, so the Warriors had to call a timeout.
Of course, when something like that happens to us, it's a technical foul and we lose the game. In his case, it was just a delay of game, right?
Yeah, the Warriors had to call a timeout to avoid it.
Right.
You're right. You understand things. We would have been penalized for it, for sure. So it was weird, but I'll defend... I don't think the crowd was bad last night. I think the crowd was just flummoxed like everybody. That how is this actually happening?
It's hard to self-start in that situation.
And when Nas hit that 3, there was a Bronx cheer about it. But as they were trying to get back into that thing, like you said, they had endless 9-point deficits that they just couldn't quite get over that hump. The crowd was still there, I thought, despite all of that. Like they were, because they've seen a lot, obviously, in the last couple of years with comebacks, and even in the Lakers series, right? They had to come back a couple of times at home and finish the final 4 minutes of the game really strong. When Anthony was at the free throw line and missed his first free throw, there's a little bit of grumbling, but then it quickly pivoted to we're here and helping you out.
That's how I took it.
We're getting behind you.
We're trying to encourage you here.
Totally.
Come on, just make this one and let's get going.
And I think that's different than it's been in the past.
Yeah.
Again, it's game 1 of a series. It's not an elimination game because we've talked about how nervous people get in those type of situations when you know that your back's up against the wall. I thought, given all the circumstances, I thought the crowd was pretty in tune with all the different moments last night and reacted accordingly.
This is from St. Louis Park's Paul. I was there as well last night celebrating my son's 22nd birthday. Crowd was amped up early, ready to go nuts, and it was one massive cold, soaking wet blanket after another. Got fun with the cute late run, but otherwise it was one of the most frustrating nights in a ballpark, stadium, or arena that I have experienced. To play on the court and the bench was, to me, unacceptable, prompting my son to coin the phrase, Finch, please. Jeff in Minneapolis. What's so disappointing to me is that OKC lost on Monday. Wolves could have made this a short series. Using the timeout for Finchy to get them ready for the Thunder could be a real lost opportunity. They need to hear the "Get a Fire in Our Ass" sounder on some kind of a tape loop.
We've got to get a fire in our ass.
That's it. That's Jeff from Minneapolis.
By the way, that could still happen.
Sure it could.
They could rattle off 4 in a row.
That's the thing.
And finish it in 5. They could.
As I said, I mean, in all honesty, they should dominate the rest of this series.
Right.
If Curry's not there, it makes absolutely no... Because you can always say, within a game, there's a certain adrenaline. They're playing well. People are feeling good. And you can kind of get away with it. You know?
Yep.
But it's supposed to catch up with you once you start games without them, right? Pretty quickly that you don't have the best shooter in the universe. So they absolutely, as we said earlier, though, they're now kind of in a no-win position, which is they have to win. If they don't, they're going to get obliterated.
Yes.
And if they do win, they're not going to get that much credit. Although, really, so what? They'll still be in the conference finals at that point.
The word, my favorite buzzword of the week, you can use this and we'll use it. It has to do with Steph's gravity. Have you heard that one?
Gravity's the new one.
Gravity's the new one.
Ant's got gravity.
Yes.
Steph's got gravity. Stuff that there's a gravitational pull defensively towards that player.
Yes.
In a way that if other players play it right, they can take advantage of it.
What I noticed, and this isn't because I'm a great basketball mind, it's just obvious in the second quarter, and I talked to Johnny and Chris Hine about this at halftime, it's like outer space. It should be outer space with this Warriors offense. There should be really no gravity to that extent. Like you shouldn't really have to help off of anybody. And that's what was so disappointing. You shouldn't.
No.
They're going to have to be creative.
Play it honest.
Just Just guard Jimmy Butler straight up.
Yeah.
Guard Draymond straight up. Don't get beat off the dribble. Make sure you're not getting in any weird switching situations. Figure out who they are trying to hunt. And last night, I think it was Nas a little bit with buckets.
Well, eventually, yeah.
Eventually. But there isn't that same guy that's just going to put you in a blender where you're just going to be spinning for 24 seconds, scrambling, running around in rotations. If you're the defensive team that you say that you are and think that you are, you should be able to figure that out a little bit over the course of the next 4, 5, 6 games.
This will be officially the top of the hour pause. When we return, raw dogging at the Vatican. How's that for a tease?